Hi everyone, it's Tanya from Shattered Bones, and today I'm going to read another part of my blog that you can find on shatteredbones.com if you want to read them yourself. Anyways, this one is called Dirty Sally. I was beaten and tortured by my mother from the earliest time I can remember. Simply eating my lunch too loud would justify a backhand across the head. My mother is what I always called sneaky mean. The technical term for a person with similar traits is a covert predator. She puts on a completely different persona for the outside world, but behind closed doors, my mother would call herself Dirty Sally. I believe my mother's alter ego, Dirty Sally, is her authentic self. The kind, jolly person that society sees outside of our home is a make-believe fake version of her. I was constantly on guard. I never knew when I was going to be grabbed by my arm or my hair and flung against the wall. I was often chased by her with a broomstick or a wet dog pee-filled mop. I remember being in high school with this still happening. And when I read my vlogs, I add in extra. So this is one thing that I want to add because I remember my husband's little sister was only maybe 5 or 6 years old. When I was in high school, I was babysitting her and I would take her to my house after school. I'd pick her up and take her to my house to watch her. And she would see my mom just attacking me and beating me. And I remember I could run. We had hardwood floors and I would run and I would dive under the beds and I would like slide under the bed. It was almost like diving in water. I was so used to hiding from her. And I knew if I got all the way back, if I could slide under the bed and then lean against the wall, she couldn't get me because she would still poke the broomstick down after me, and try to hurt me that way. And my mother-in-law, who I love so much, she was like a mother to me. She taught me to cook and do laundry and everything that my mother never taught me. She passed away in 2013, but she told me, she was like, Tanya, I'm so sorry. I can't let you watch Trish anymore. And I started crying and I'm like, why? Why can't I see her? Because I loved his little sister. And she said, it's because of your mom. She said she had to take Trish to therapy because Trish was having so much of a problem with watching my mother beat me. So yeah, that was devastating to me. So she told me I could watch her if I went to their house. And sometimes I still did that, but I was not allowed to bring her back to my house anymore. I never knew when I would be grabbed by my arm or my hair, flung against the wall. I didn't even weigh 100 pounds in high school, like my senior year of high school. So she's a pretty big lady and she would just fling me around like a mop. It was awful. I didn't know how long the beatings would last. It would go on until Dirty Sally felt better. During my younger years, I began to idolize my father, not for reasons most little girls love their daddies. No. What made me love my dad was when he came home in a drunken rage and beat on my mom. At first, it scared me to death. I would grab my little sister and together we would hide in a closet or under a bed. Now, my sister's 2.5, I'm 2.5 years older than her, almost 3 years older than her. As I grew older and angrier, my feelings changed. I believe I was around 8 or 9 when I started to sneak out of the closet, leave my sister in there, and I'd walk down the hallway, and then I would sneak to watch him punch her. I was secretly cheering him on. In my mind, I was saying, hit her again, punch her in the head. That's what she gets for beating me with that broom. How sad it is to realize, as a tortured child, this is how I found consolation. The only comfort in my young life was watching my father beat my mother. Dirty Sally noticed me watching him beating her one day. She gave me the meanest look. And I knew I was going to be in big trouble the next day. Still, I locked eyes with her as he had her pinned down in the recliner. And that was the defining moment for her torture tactics to change. I challenged her. From that day forward, she used more weapons and became more violent. On Fridays, my father would let my mother out of the house. He typically took us to Frisch's. My mother looked forward to Fridays, and Fridays became my safe day too, because Dirty Sally typically stayed away on that day. It was a day that I could count on my mom to remain happy, content, and kind. She'd wash her hair, put on her makeup, her best clothes, her jewelry. She had to be certain that we were dressed a certain way and our hair was a certain way. After all, we had an image to maintain. Sometimes Dad would refuse to take us on a Friday. He would never plan this in advance. It was something he used that he would throw at the last minute when he came home. I remember how defeated my mom would look on those days. He would tell her, "No, I don't feel like going out today." She would start sobbing hysterically on how she worked for 3 hours on her hair and makeup, and she cussed like a sailor. She shouted at him and reminded him that she thought he was an old drunk and he was an abusive prick. And I would quickly grab my sister's hand and we would hide in our room until it was over. Dad refused to allow Mom to work. She wasn't allowed to get a driver's license when we were young. I recall many times when she rode the school bus and she would sneak on the school bus just to escape our home. She'd walk around town, visit my aunts while we were in school. Then she would ride the bus back home with us, and she told us never ever to tell her father. I was always kind of embarrassed by that, but it is what it is. My childhood was based on secrets and lies. Dad just disconnected the central air conditioning unit on the hottest days of the summer just to punish my mother. He would physically cut the phone lines in a rage. I even recall him cutting off the electricity or cutting the cords off the television to punish my mother. He had to be certain that she had zero contact with anyone. Back then, I was too young to understand how incredibly abusive he was. She never knew when he would rage on her, and I never knew when she would rage on me. One Friday, Mother decided to curl my straggly hair. Mom bragged about my sister's beautiful brown curls and would scrunch up her nose at my straight black hair. She carefully prepared a piece of my hair and clamped the end of it in the thick, hot curling iron. Then she would roll my hair towards my scalp and she would start to count to 12 out loud. 1001, 1002. I remember seeing smoke coming off my hair, and then she would release it. On one particular curl, I remember feeling the heat from the iron being way too close to my scalp. I heard her counting 1, 1000, 2, 1000, 3, 1000, 4, 1000, 5, 1000. I prayed for her to count faster. I wasn't sure how much longer I could sit still. It was really starting to burn my head. 6, 1000, 7, 1000, 8. I just couldn't handle it anymore. It was hurting so bad, so I instinctively jerked my head away from her, from the smoldering iron. In less than a second, my mother was gone, and Dirty Sally was outraged. She yanked my hair, still wrapped in the curling iron, back. She pulled my hair to where I was looking up to the ceiling. This made me yell out loud, "Ow!" And I reached my hand up toward the handle of the iron because I didn't want to grab the hot part. And I don't know if it was my scream or the movement that made her livid, but something I did instinctively, I knew I had to get away fast. So my eyes started darting to every escape in the room. The basement door was behind me. The kitchen was in front of me. I even glanced under the table next to me. My mind was moving a million directions at once. Sometimes she can't reach me if I get under a bed or a table or I push way, way back by the wall. Then I realized my hair still caught in the curling iron and she still had it. I instantly felt terrified. I was unable to run like I usually do, so I froze. My eyes enlarged as my brain processed being trapped. I stared straight ahead, making sure I wouldn't move a muscle, and I tried really hard not to make eye contact with her. She was standing. Suddenly she moved and was standing directly in front of me, still holding on to the iron. I didn't move a muscle. I was staring at her waist. Time seemed to stand still. Then she grabbed my left shoulder with her right hand. She grabbed my left shoulder with her right hand, and she had her left hand firmly holding the iron wrapped in my hair with my smoking hair. In one swift pull, she yanked my tiny body out of the chair to a standing position. Then she stooped down straight at my face and shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you, you stupid bitch? I told you to sit still." And with each word, she shook my shoulders for emphasis. The force of her shaking me made me lose my balance. And I was really trying hard to keep my legs to stand up. She finally unrolled my hair, and without warning, I felt her unroll my hair She grabbed my left wrist with her right hand, and she pulled my arm straight out in front of my body towards her. And then she twisted my wrist away from my body. Like, she twisted it like this. So it was going this way, and then she twisted my arm like that. Really turned. I stared down in shock as my elbow was nearly in front of my body. I whimpered through the pain. I thought for sure she was going to break my arm. I didn't dare scream out loud. I knew my arm was about to break. Any noise or movement by me would only make her hurt me more. I continued to suck in my tears. Just when I thought I couldn't silently handle any more pain, she stooped down and stared at me straight in the eyes. She was daring me to move or make a sound. I tried to avert her gaze, and then she gave me that smirk. I felt my stomach drop the same way it feels when you swing high on a swing and come back down. In a flash, Dirty Sally grabbed the scalding hot iron in her left hand and held it at an angle to my arm. The scorching hot metal melted into the fragile pale skin inside my forearm. She burned me right here. I remember feeling shocked. I expected my arm to be twisted or broken, but this was a new torture. I released a guttural howl in agony. Oh! I could hear the sizzling sound the iron made on my skin. I could smell my soul, flesh burning. Again, I froze. I could feel my heart beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I tried desperately to hold back my sobs, but I couldn't do it. My cheeks were streaming with silent tears. Oh, this is kind of hard to read. She held the iron to my flesh for what felt like an eternity. I recall the moment my mother realized that what she was doing. I saw her eyes soften as she breathed in a quick gasp of air. She was looking at me and she kind of went, and then I recognized. I remember seeing the shift as her mind processed what she was doing to me. She was no longer Dirty Sally. My skin was stuck on the metal iron. When she finally pulled it away, I screamed again in pain. Because I realized it's okay for me to cry now. She immediately changed from being enraged to being somewhat kind. She grabbed my other arm and dragged me to the sink. And she started running cold water on my burn. My skin was peeling and slaving away. It was bright red underneath. The water ran over my wound. I screamed some more. I remember moving my legs and screaming and screaming and screaming. She went and made an ice pack, and she told me to put ice on my arm. And then she put some oily stuff on there and covered it up. It's strange how she comforted me that day. It was one of the few times I felt nurtured by her. I now understand she wasn't empathetic toward my pain. She was fearful that my father would discover what she had done to me. She was sneaky about when she hit me, and I didn't dare tell my father what she did to me because my father beat me too. My sister saw the entire thing. Instead of showing me any kindness, she looked me dead in the eyes with her 6-year-old hand on her hip and said, "Well, she told you to sit still. You should have listened, like I always do, don't I, Mommy?" And my mom agreed with her and said, "Yes, you're my good girl." My tender, frail heart died a little bit more. And that night when my dad came home, he noticed the bandage on my arm and he wanted to see it. I uncovered the bandage to show him, and I felt a sense of hope. I thought that this was finally the moment he would realize how bad my mom treated me when he wasn't home. He asked me what happened. My mother quickly spoke up and told him she was curling my hair and I was wiggling around and wouldn't sit still. She went on to explain how I accidentally leaned my arm on the hot curling iron that was sitting on the table. I immediately looked at the ground to avoid making eye contact with anyone. The burn was inside my forearm, nearly impossible for me to lean on a sitting curling iron at that angle. I glanced over at my little sister, hoping that she would tell the truth, but she didn't say a word. In fact, she crossed her arms and gave me the exact same smirk that Dirty Sally gave me. The look that dared me to say anything to the contrary. I didn't waste my breath. From that day forward, I was the chosen family scapegoat. I was outnumbered and I knew it. It's funny the memories the brain will lock away to protect you. PTSD does this and will unlock them when you're ready to process them. I'm interesting because this is before I realized and before I was clinically diagnosed with DID, dissociative identity disorder. So when I'm writing this, I only know I have PTSD. So a scar from the burn, but I don't know if the camera will pick up on it. I'll try to take a picture of it, but there's actually a burn scar right here where it's real white. But anyways, they're all just for the pain that I get across my left forearm, but that ice would help temporarily. The EEG discovered bilateral carpal tunnel. So as soon as he put the needles in, he said, well, you definitely have carpal tunnel, but he said it's equal on both sides, which means it's metabolic. That means they can't do surgery to fix it. If they could do surgery and nothing's going to help. He also told me that there are no nerves that run in the direction that my pain was. So he was baffled. Just couldn't find a physical explanation for my left inner forearm pain. He stated there's no nerve that runs in that direction. Through psychotherapy and inner childhood trauma therapy, I remembered the curling iron incident. Since then, the burning sensations I've struggled with for so many decades has completely gone away. A why not moment, which is again Tanya spelled backwards. Healthy parents would notice the signs of abuse and protect their child. Toxic families intentionally look the other way. It was easier for everyone to use me as a family scapegoat than it was to face their own personal demons. I saw it quoted someplace, it's easier to grow strong children than to build up broken adults. I can attest to this. I have been in therapy off and on my entire adult life. I could never figure out why I was so unhappy until finally a therapist asked me about my childhood. She told me when she asked me about my own mother, I unconsciously put my hands around my neck and I looked up like this and breathed. Then the pieces started falling together like a puzzle. My PTSD diagnosis was many years ago. I never heard of anyone but soldiers having this. The therapist finally explained, Tanya, you grew up in a war zone every single day of your childhood for 18 years. That's the first time it was strongly suggested for me to go no contact with my toxic family of origin. At the time, I was trauma bonded to my family. My cognitive dissonance prevented me from being able to process walking away and never speaking to my family again. So I left therapy that day and didn't tell anyone but my husband about my diagnosis. It took me years, decades, from my initial diagnosis to gather the courage to go no contact, and that story is for another day. Love y'all more.